Perfect. So, welcome everyone to a space that we share about innovation, current affairs, economy, and society from the perspective of LFS and our guest. Today we have a very special friend, a good old friend for LFS, Tim Tudor, Chief Executive Officer for ECU Worldwide. How are you, Tim?
Very good, Andres. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. Likewise. Team, would you mind, before we start with the actual questions that we have this afternoon, tell us a little bit about your background before becoming CEO for ECU Worldwide? What roles did you manage to have over your career? Should be very excited to hear about that.
Sure. So prior to joining ECU Worldwide, I was with one of our key competitors in the global space, and I was initially participating in Southeast US, and then I was running USA, and then for a short period I became the global chief operating officer. That was a short period, and then I left and I came into ECU. So I've been in the MBOCC space for about 23 years now. Always being based in Miami during that period. Prior to that, I was with a carrier for 13 years. I started at Sealand, and then that morphed into a carrier on the West Coast called Australia New Zealand Direct Line. So I've had various different, mostly operating jobs, some sales related jobs, but mostly operations related jobs. But I cut my teeth in the MBOCC business at one of our key competitors.
Great, Tim. The idea today, Tim, is that we talk a little bit more about the freight forwarder and MBOCC current role in the supply chain and how their experience deliver, let's say, significant value to customers, especially at these times. I would like to start reminding everyone that the questions are going to be led at the end of this conversation. And if you guys have any questions at all, please, you can send it through the chat that we have on this webinar so we can address those questions at the end. My first question to you, team, it will be, I mean, I'm aware that everyone in this webinar knows exactly who ECU is, but I would like to know, besides the ECU role, who is Tim? I mean, you're married, you have kids. How do you spend the little amount of time that you have left from your ECU responsibilities?
Okay, yeah, no, I am married. I do have 5 children. My wife and I have 5 children. As I mentioned earlier, we live here in Miami. I'm very fortunate that both my parents and her mom also live here in Miami. And my wife also has 7 sisters, so she has a very large family, and they're all here. So when it's not work related, it's focus on family. A lot of it is focus on family, whether it's the parents, the children, or the extended family. That takes up a lot of our time. And for me, the luxury for me is the size of her family also helps me feel better when I'm away. I know that she's surrounded by her large family, sisters and brother-in-laws and nieces and what have you, and her mom, of course. So family brings great comfort to us. And then I like myself. I like to do some golfing and yard work. If I like to get some physical activity, but I do that through yard work.
That's great. That's great.
Here in South Florida, the sun and the rain, everything grows.
Exactly. I bet you have a big yard then to entertain yourself with.
Big weeds, small yard.
That's great. That's great. Now, Tim, going back to your CEO role in ECU, would you mind sharing with us what are some of those key goals for ECU Worldwide? As far as the strategy goes and long-term goals?
Sure. Sure. I mean, the first and foremost thing for my responsibility, of course, is shareholder value, right? Increase shareholder value by improving the value of the organization. A couple of the key items that we focus on doing that, and actually, I've had the job I have now, I've only had for 18 months, and last year, 2019, was a transition year for me to get into this new role, and I also developed my strategy and was actually rolling it out at the beginning of this year, and we were actually doing very well for the first 3 months of the year. But increasing shareholder value, right? So how do you do that? Well, we want to leverage some synergies, right? So different parts of the business, we need to coordinate with the different departments and what have you, and find the common practices. So best practices, we call it a model office implementation, where we're going around the globe and we're doing, what is the ideal office and how do we actually replicate these things? How do we standardize to scale? How do we, to make it bigger, we find that we need standardization and optimization in a model office environment. That doesn't necessarily mean outsourcing. It does include some outsourcing, but the second item that I wanted to add to you was the digital process, right? So we want to get into an intelligent business solution for our customers. And to really support digital, we need to have very, very standard processes in the operations, because it all feeds up to the platform, right? So we need to be sharp on everything we do. So synergies within the organization, model office type environment, digital, and then we need to scale the volume. We basically have now, we have a fixed cost to run the business, and if we can throw volume through the system, we can really, really improve our return on investment.
Now, increasing that shareholders' value, as you said, how important is M&A in that route for growing the organization?
So it's been very important. That's a good question. I've been with the company now 10 years, and I'm going to say there's probably no less than 10 acquisitions that we've done in that time. Here in the US was probably the largest one that we did, which was the acquisition of, which now become one of our flagships in the enterprise, is the Econocarib, right? So that was a significant acquisition. It was meaningful to the organization, and also meaningful to our portfolio, of course. We've done acquisitions for an FCL company in Europe. We've done acquisitions for MBOCC business in Italy. We've done acquisitions for warehouses. We've done acquisitions for all kinds of activity. So acquisitions are a part of our strategy for growth. Absolutely.
And during those 10 years, doing those acquisitions, how riskier it is?
Well, it's we try to do the best we can in the due diligence. It's not a flip of the coin by any means. We try to make them strategic in as a target acquisition, right? Something we need, something we wanted, something we would look for. And so from that perspective, it reduces the risk, because it is something we need, something we want, and something we look for. There are some opportunity acquisitions, and quite frankly, those have all gone well. I can only say one really was not as successful as it could have been, but other than that, they've all been very or relatively successful.
Great. Now I want to move forward a little bit into ECU's world. I know ECU, it's a world leader for LCL, and there has been increasing focus on the full container load. What would you think will be the potential for full container load in the MVOCC sector, and how is ECU planning to tap the opportunities in this segment with the current situation ahead of us?
So FCL is an area that we want to grow, and there's a couple of important pieces to it. Is that we also need an FCL product to have the volume to be relevant to ocean carriers, right? So when you have an FCL volume compared in collaboration with our groupage volumes, with the LCL boxes that we're packing, then we can scale. We can improve our seat at the table, our buying power with the carriers, right? So from a strategic perspective, FCL is important. And there's also an area in the market where the small to medium freight forwarders, they don't want to have a lot of different contracts. They don't want to deal with a lot of different carriers. They want to book a box here with this carrier this week, book one here with this carrier this week. And they can do that all through using the services of an MBO. So we can help them manage, and then they don't have to worry about procurement on their own. So there's a need for the service, and we're continually trying to promote it within that group.
Now I'm going to ask you this because it's a mandatory question, but how is ECU doing in dealing with the current pandemic situation? I mean, what challenges are you facing, or you, let's see, are looking forward to face within the next few months?
So one of the, I'm working in my daughter's bedroom, right? And I think a lot of us, maybe a lot of people listening, are also working in places other than their office, right? We're all at some point working in a work from home. Look, we lived this pandemic very early. We have 800 employees in China, and so when they didn't come back from holiday, this is now late January, early February. So everybody plans for Chinese New Year, and then all of a sudden, well, we're not coming back. What do you mean you're not coming back? That's a week, and then another week, and then extended again. And so all the planned February volume decrease, which is traditional in that time of year, was budgeted for and planned, but it wasn't planned for an extended period, right? So we felt the volume decrease immediately, and we knew something was coming. We knew something was happening, and then we felt it around the world, right? As it moved into Europe, the next real crisis was Italy, and they went into a little bit of a panic shutdown, all very early days of really nobody knew how this virus was being transmitted or how tough it was. And then it spread throughout Europe, and then obviously it came to the US and into India. So we have dealt with the challenges like most companies or many companies. We put 80% of our workforce, most of the non-warehouse people, 80% of our global workforce, from one day to the other, work from home. That was a massive undertaking, right? We're talking about 3,000 employees, getting them set up, and security issues system security issues were important at the time. So we've had lots of challenges. From a P&L perspective, we've been fortunate in the sense that we're pretty diversified around the globe. We have where some volumes were suffering, other volumes were firing pretty good. Some countries have never really slowed down, and part of our strategy from last year was to really focus on Europe. So Europe was really doing very well for us late into December and into Jan, Feb, March. So we were much better than the year before. So we had that benefit running in our favor. So amongst all the challenges, we also have been fortunate to have had the strategy that was rolling out and delivering the opportunities. And
this question, you kept talking about ECU's team and ECU's people everywhere in the world. And I know ECU, it's recognized for his effectiveness, what efforts goes into hiring the best personnel across the world, and how critical is this people for ECU's organization.
Right. So absolutely, we take great pride in trying to bring on the best talent we can, right? There has been times when it's challenging. The U.S. in particular, for the last several years, has had very little unemployment. So where people were looking for work, they had work. So it was harder to recruit and harder to find recruit good talent. But around the globe, we're always considering ourselves as we take good diligence in recruiting our people.
Great. Earlier in this conversation, you mentioned it, technology, and I know technology has been one area that ECU in recent years have invested heavily. What are the plans for the technology front? How deep you are in things like IoT, Internet of Things, or big data is something that you guys are working on?
So absolutely. So I spend probably half of my day on technology type of things, right? The strategy to how we want to deliver our digital solutions. And my first wake up call in this role on what digital means, it wasn't the sexy front end of a website. It wasn't that cool slick thing or the app. It was the big data behind it, the accuracy, back to what I was saying earlier, the standardization of processes, the standardization of data, the standardization. We have in our global tariff environment, we have roughly about 190 million line items of invoices, invoice line items that we have to manage globally. So that has so my wake up call to the digital revolution has been big data, and we've put an enormous amount of time behind that to get our what we call our platform, which is our ECU 360, to get it accurate and working function properly at all times. Right? We want anybody can come in and ask for a rate from anywhere to anywhere, or a sailing schedule from anywhere to anywhere, and it has to deliver. It can't just come up blank. And that's not an easy task. We're probably about 70% of the way done with it. But so big data is a big one. We talk about AI and machine learning a little bit. I haven't really seen that. We talk about it. And the RPAs, I think that RPAs a year ago were the talk. We couldn't stop talking about them. And I think we only have 3 robots around, but we didn't really know what they were going to do, right? So we ended up kind of fizzling out on that side of it, but we certainly talk about technology and how technology can improve our business and our customers' experience with us regularly.
Great, great. Now that you mentioned customers, and perhaps me talking from my previous experience being ECU's customer at some point, I know ECU's customers baseline, it's fundamental for its growth through like neutral partnerships with freight forwarders around the world. What would you believe will be the future for those allies, for those freight forwarders that today are your customers?
So it's the same. The dynamics change. So the large multinational forwarders who oftentimes run their own gateways and their own product as an LCL, if volumes shrink in the coming months and who knows how long, whatever the new normal is going to look like, right? Then that has a negative impact on their own product and their own services. And that's an opportunity for me to step in and help them, right? So it's a little bit of the same. I think that to some extent, and I need to be careful here as I say it, but to some extent, the LCL business is resilient because even shippers and our forwarders, customers, instead of shipping a full container load, they might ship smaller parcels. They might ship 4 pallets and have more frequent shipments and less and smaller, more frequent and smaller, right? So the LCL is always going to be a product that I think is going to benefit from good times and bad times.
Now, in that question, I would like to go a little bit more into specifics, and perhaps not everyone knows that your Spanish is even better than your English, and you have a close relationship with the Latin American region. The same question, but related to Latin America. What specific challenges you think Latin America is going to have in the months to come?
I think that it saddens me I think that the impact on Latin America, the economic impact on Latin America is going to be pretty significant in South America as a result of a little bit of a slowdown. So if China slows down, the minerals out of the West Coast and the ores and what have you, they'll have a tendency to slow down. The one who could have an uptick, but not because of the pandemic, Could be Mexico, as plants might come, the trade war with China, as plants might come closer to home. They might not necessarily need to come to the U.S. necessarily, but come into Mexico. So Mexico could have an uptick in business. But South America, for me, and I'm not an economist, I have to put that caveat out there, but it worries me. It worries me. I'm concerned. I don't know. How do you feel? I know that you're.
I think so too. I mean, I think, I believe like like it's in, let's say Latin America, whatever happens in Mexico and whatever happens in Brazil, we just follow that pathway. And as we have noticed, Brazil hasn't done enough to stop this bleed, and I think consequences are still not clear. So I mean, and I mean, if you just go and look at it, I mean, what's the, let's say, more damaged population in Latin America to be suffer after this? You notice that Latin America, probably 65% of the jobs are probably informal jobs that are actually not secure on the streets. So I think consequences are going to take a little bit longer than anywhere else in the world. But I also do believe that being small countries, we might be able to recover faster than some other economies. I mean, for example, Colombia, where I'm from, I do particularly believe that people, with their optimism, with the strength, with the DNA that we have as Colombians, we're going to get through easier perhaps than some other countries. But I concur with you. I mean, Latin America, and I was going to ask you that question. I mean, and we need to talk about besides Latin America, but I think Latin America for sure is going to be the most affected area around the world. I mean, besides probably Africa, that we don't even see news about that at this moment. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad.
Yeah, I echo your sentiments on that, and I hope we're wrong.
Yeah. Now, for the people that has follow ECU very closely, me being one of those guys, we know the company made a major acquisition some months back for a huge player on the last mile sector. I would like if you can tell us a little bit about that. How important is that for ECU's long-term strategy, and how close the companies that are in the third party sector, as far as logistics, the freight forwarder industry, everyone related to logistics need to pay attention to last mile opportunities.
So I don't know much about it, right? Doesn't come under my umbrella of management, right? So, right. But it is an Indian-based company, right? The company that we acquired. So I think it has first and last mile for about 95% of India, in coverage of India's zip codes, if you want to call them that, right? Okay. And even small package delivery, envelope delivery, and that kind of thing as well. So it's a big business. And that acquisition actually has just gone through, and that the first month was March, and then April. India of all the countries in the world had one of the harder lockdowns, where they locked down and sent everybody home, and so the business has come down significantly. Now we're at the end. We're early June, so that was for April. It took the whole month of May to kind of get the system up and running again, and now we're probably running at about 50 or 60% capacity, and it's turning out to be a good acquisition. But these are things that I hear not as a member of the leadership team handling that entity, but as part of the board. The bits and pieces that I get. But it's been a big acquisition for us, huh?
Yeah, that's what I heard. Now, e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
How much we need to look into e-commerce for the months to come?
Look, I think it's not just for the months to come. It's here to stay, and it was here to. We could have said this 3 years ago. We could have said it 5 years ago and not known it. Right? It's here to stay, and it's only going to get bigger. Look what the pandemic has done. Right? I mean, I don't know. If you want to social distance, the best way to get things delivered is to buy things, is to get them delivered to your house and let them sit on the front porch for a few hours. Right? So e-commerce is going to continue to be a big player. I was reading an article today that Amazon has taken on 12 767s, I think they are, taking delivering of them. Yeah, they have a fleet. They have 80 airplanes in their fleet. I didn't realize they had that many. So it's here to stay. And the Amazon type model of customers is here to stay. So we continually want to improve our own digital experience with customers with our own tools and our own platform and our own portals. But we're also talking to other people who are in the platform business to see how we can partner with them. So I think that e-commerce or very efficient transactions, or whatever you might want to call it, is here to stay, and it's part of our today, and certainly going to be part of our future.
Now, you brought the Amazon word into this webinar, and how big of a threat you think Amazon is, and I'm not going to say it's going to be, but is right now, for freight forwarders and logistics intermediaries in the current industry?
So sorry, what was that? I missed that one.
Yeah, the Amazon effect, Amazon becoming this freight forwarder type of thing. I mean, do we see it as a threat?
Yes, it should be. We should see it as a threat. I don't know if I can't tell you the shape it's going to be yet, right? If you worked at a delivery company like a UPS or a FedEx or even the post office, and they're your biggest customer, would you be afraid of them leaving you? Yes, absolutely. I see more Amazon trucks in my neighborhood now than I do U.S. Post Office. So they're going to continue to grow, and they certainly have been in the driver's seat in the last 3 or 4 months in terms of being able to drive growth. Their model supports it. So they're going to continue. Now, whether they'll get into the freight forwarding for multinational organizations or not, we'll see. I'm not so sure. I don't have that.
I don't know if you noticed, I mean, if you read that a few days ago, they announced Amazon was buying some shares at a digital freight forwarder called Beacon.
I did see that.
I mean, do you see anything special about that move in Amazon's part?
I don't know. I don't understand the company well enough to know what they're trying to buy or look at. From the Amazon strategy perspective, I suppose that they have a lot of money to invest. And so picking things up, I think they put $15 million there. So picking things up here and there, $15 million to me is a tremendous amount of money. $15 million to them is probably not so much.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, and this is only a secret to share between you and I, but I had the opportunity 5 months ago to invest in Beacon.
Oh, good for you. Remember, this isn't a private call, but okay.
But it surprised me because, I mean, the motives behind me investing in that, it was a completely different thing. But I always saw a company like Beacon. It was kind of like type of a Freightos, and what Freightos was like 3, 4, 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I didn't see that much of a change. But now with this giant company coming in, it might look different. It might look different.
It depends on how many shares you have. You might be the boss. So,
It's pennies. I mean, but yeah, it was a big shock.
That's a good one. Well played. Well played. You'll be happy with that.
Now, Tim, uh, I know we talk a little bit about Latin America, but what would you consider will suffer the most for recovery moving forward? Let's say at the end of this year, that perhaps we're going to be, hope God, in a different situation. It's going to be Europe. It's going to be Asia. It's going to be America. I mean, what are the bets for it?
So I've said the disclaimer before. I'm not an economist, but and I think that it doesn't necessarily have to be region. To your point earlier on the size of countries, right? Okay. So if you say Europe, Europe never really recovered in full from the financial crisis of 2008 and 9, but so they were just sort of really started. Germany did, if you want to call it that, but Belgium has just really started to come out of it. So, and Spain. So I worry about smaller countries, the Mediterranean. They always seem to get hit. Spain, Italy, Greece. They for some reason they get hit a little bit harder than Northern Europe. So not Europe as a whole, but those countries worry me. The U.S. economy, we'll see what happens, right? We have a lot of uncertainty here right now, and there's I don't know what's going to happen, right? China's I don't understand their numbers. I don't understand their economy. I think that if the world slows down a bit, they will suffer. How it's reported or how it's recognized, who knows? Southeast Asia will be fine. India will benefit will come back strong. I think will come back pretty fast and pretty strong. And Africa always kind of ends up a little bit of a loser as well, right? They harder to recover and what have you. So it's going to be pockets, and I don't think it's going to be everybody at once or everybody misery. There's going to be some countries that are affected harder than others, and I hope I'm wrong. But I do sense that people are just going to be a little bit more conservative with their money.
Good. I mean, questions are starting to raise here in our webinar, and there's one that I would love for you to address this question, and it's think about me being a 3PL with probably 5-6 years on the market. What would you say to me in order to go through this present, to this specific moment and time in the world on the logistics space? I mean, how I'll be surviving this specific moment? Can you give me some tools for it? That's the question that I get from the audience.
Look, I think that, and whether it's now or any other time, really having a good sales pipeline, if you have business flow, if you can get business to come to you, you'll always survive anything, right? Because one of the colleagues I work with always says, hey, if my competitors have business, then there's market share for me to get, right? So if you have a good sales pipeline, if you have good sales tools yourself, then you can get through almost everything. Sales to me and customer. You got to have that customer relationship. You don't want to lose customers. You got to have that, be able to acquire new customers, and that comes from the sales pipeline.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you're a light asset based company. Assets, how important will be in the years to come?
I think less and less, right? I think that I think that the asset light, the non-asset based businesses will, because you can swell and you can shrink as demand comes and goes, right? And you can and you just look at what happened with the shipping lines, right? As the pandemic moved around. they plan and they have Chinese New Year down to a wire. It's an annual event. They reposition boxes to China in advance of the holiday. Freight comes out, the holiday closes, and then the empties come back in. Well, that didn't happen, and they had loaded boxes in China that weren't getting unloaded. The terminals were jammed with 60, 70,000 TEUs in Shanghai. Actually, I think that's what they pulled off the docks on a daily basis. So it was hundreds of thousands of loaded containers going into China that needed to get unloaded. They didn't have any empty supply coming in, so manufacturers were coming back going to work. There wasn't any empties. The assets are difficult to manage and hard to manage and cost a lot of money.
Yeah, you're right about that.
You could say the same model to domestic trucking in any large market, and even warehousing. We'll see what commercial real estate what happens with commercial real estate, office space. We'll see what happens with office space.
I think that's even more important to look at. I mean, office space is gonna be hurt really bad. Yeah.
This work from home model worked, and there's 123 people on this call, and I don't know how many people are hurrying to go back to the office.
Yeah, and 123 people, because we don't see people outside our network, but it's
okay.
like 300. But that's a good question. What's ECU's policy now that there's so many debates about working from home or going back to the office?
So first and foremost, we're very health conscious, right? So we're going to comply with social distancing in the offices as local laws mandate, and we also want to have people feel comfortable. So restaurants are open here in Miami, and I haven't been to one yet. I'm just not hurry. I don't know if I'd feel uncomfortable in it, but there's no need to run to one. I don't want to be the first one there. So we have, it depends on the offices we've got yellow tape in all the offices. We've got one-way hallways now in all the offices. Elevators in our Belgian office, as an example, it's a 4-story building. Elevators are going up only. You come down the stairs unless you absolutely have to, and then you can reserve the elevator because you're carrying something down, or these kind of things, right? So you have to, the flow of traffic, move desks around. But not everybody needs to come to the office. Not everybody wants to. So we're all the work from home option is still there, but working from home hasn't been successful for everybody either. So we need to have the office space. So we're being very flexible, but we want to be health conscious first. Have our employees be comfortable. They have to be comfortable if you want to get a productive day out of them, in my view. And so they have to be comfortable in their space. And we'll see how much office space we need in the future. We don't have any immediate leases that are coming up, but as they do, we'll see if we need to continue with the same amount of space or not.
Yeah,
that story is not over yet. That's an evolving story, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, and like you said it before, with economies around the world, the same thing here. I mean, you cannot make a decision based on the whole company, but you have to look at certain teams that are necessary to just mingle and stay within the same room, but there'll be teams that are working from home will be a piece of cake. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
And there's also, there's tradition too, right? Like if you go to a China office, right? The tradition is to come to the office and, there's a line of people to go up the elevators in the morning and a line of people to go down the elevators in the evening. And, all the desks are very small and close to each other, and they still come to the office.
Yeah. China, it's a different ball game. I mean, I'm sure they'll have their own rules when it comes to respecting people's space. So yeah, it's now, Tim, there's a lot of young audience in this webinar, and I know, I mean, I've been there watching closely everything that you have done. What would you say to the young people to thrive in the logistics world?
Learn it. learn it and learn all aspects of it. Get to be a real professional at it. Don't just think that you sat at a customer service desk for a year or a desk here or a desk there. Learn it deeply and learn and build the passion for it. It can, I'll be careful how it can be stupid simple, but it's also highly complex. Right. So if and the more senior you get in organizations, you get involved in the more highly complex areas of it too. So learn it and build a passion for it, because it is a lovable business. And it's one that most of us kind of get into by accident, right? You graduate with something and you end up at a shipping company, or you end up at an MBO, or you end up at a forwarder. There's certain markets, like in the German market, where you do an apprenticeship and you come through the proper system and what have you. But in most places, you know, there's nobody on this call who has a child who's less than 10 years old who says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And they say, "I want to be a shipping guy." That doesn't happen, right? So learn it, have a passion for it, and there is opportunity in this business. It is still a very romantic business. It's a fun business, and it's I don't want to say easy, but you can still have a lot of success in it.
Yeah, there's many people from the freight forwarding industry asking the same question: is throughout all these years, how ECU have managed to keep this neutral role in the industry? Because I bet you're approached many times by small, medium-sized, and big customers, but you still have this reputation in the world to keep that kind of a neutral role. How do you manage that?
Quite easily, actually. We are neutral. And when you wake up neutral and you go to bed neutral, you're neutral. So we live in our space, and it's not that hard to think about.
Okay. The first question that I ask you, you mentioned a little bit about, when I was asking you about LCL and FCL, we barely discussed about the vendor side, and steamship lines being a major ally for ECU. Would you say that with so many businesses, steamship lines being one of them, with so many changes, let's say cash flow issues, bankruptcy situations, do you see vendors like Maersk being even more gigantic like they are right now?
We'll see how that plays out. We'll see how big the big guys like being big, right?
Okay.
I think that some will accommodate in that space better than others. But for us, I mean, they're strategic partners, right? We treat our vendors, we treat our carrier partners the same way that we treat our customers, right? It's a relationship that we build with them. So it can't always be one way. And in the groupage business, is pretty complicated in the sense that we need empty containers in time. We're moving around, shuttling boxes around the country in the U.S. At destination on arrival, you can unpack them pretty quick and the empty is made available, but it's also a very, very reliable business for the carriers. We can tell them how many boxes in a particular port pair we're going to use on a weekly basis, and that'll be pretty much systematic throughout the entire year. So we treat our vendors, our carriers, and our trucking company partners very much like we do our customers. We try to.
Now, throughout the years, I have noticed that, let's say, networking, trade shows, getting together, it's very important in the logistics industry. But that whole thing is going to change. What would you believe will be some of the options that people have now to networking throughout the world?
So I don't know, but I'll give you a couple of examples of what the future could hold, right? So we had a board meeting 3 weeks ago, right? Now, my board meeting this is now for the ECU side of the business, right? So this is I'm driving the board meeting. And I would have flown to Dubai a whole day to get there, been there for 2 days, probably an extra day on arrival and an extra day prior to departure. So, and then a whole day to get back. So it would have been at least a week, and then maybe stop through Europe on the way home or whatever, right? So we booked a board meeting for 6 hours on a Zoom call. And my wife said, 6 hours on a Zoom call, what are you going to do that for? I go, look, I could have got a week, and it was highly effective and highly impactful. We just last week had 70 people all on the same Zoom, going in out of breakout rooms and workshops and this and that, which would have also been another 70 people flying to somewhere to have a meeting and workshops, A, at high cost, B, another week out of their schedules. And we did it on a Zoom call. Now, that's not going to take the Brazil intermodal as an example, right? That fair in particular is a good fair, or the one in Munich is also a good fair. There's one in Asia as well. The one in Mexico is interesting. TPM in California. I think that there's still going to be value to those. I think that people might actually attend these meetings more often or in larger groups, but then the general rest of the travel will be less. If you get my point, right? So I think that why would you fly all over the place and then fly to TPM to see the same people? No, don't go see them. I'll see you at TPM. And
happy hour. That's why.
yeah. But so we'll see how it all plays out. Different companies will want to behave differently. I think that every company who has slowed down the travel is enjoying and recognizing how much money they were really spending on it.
Now, do you think with that perfect example, and thank you for sharing that perfect example about a week versus 6 hours in a Zoom,
mm-hmm.
If we take that to a daily office work, do you think we need to expect better performance from our people now that there's actually staying home situation? You think performance will increase? You think KPIs should be looking at it differently that they were before?
So it goes back to what I was saying before as to how comfortable somebody is in their work from home environment, how accommodating that particular job function is, how easy it is for them to work from home. And on the management, we've had this conversation, and I have one word that really needs to come into it, but we've had a lot of conversations on how are we going to manage it. And if you take all the functions that are keystroke functions or what have you, and a lot of that stuff's already been outsourced, right? So the tracking keystrokes is a bit complicated, but one of the words that I said is trust. At some point, you gotta trust your people, and that trust, I think that the employee, company, boss relationship will change. We've gone around. So we all work together, and say you're a supervisor of a 10-person department and everybody went home. So that supervisor knows his 10 people. Perfect. But now he needs to recruit somebody. He needs to grow that to 11 people. How do you recruit? How do you train? There was always a lot of side-by-side trading. These are things, this is where I'm putting my thinking as to how to make that happen. And then how do I promote that supervisor and then replace that supervisor? So those are the ones, the job replacements and stuff. Those are the ones that are a little bit trickier, but all is doable. All is doable if you think them through correctly.
Great. Tim, I think it's about time. It's all for today. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. You already shared with me how 4:30 a.m. looks like. So thank you so much. And hopefully we'll have you here soon enough to share with us some of your experiences.
No, I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me. I'm available anytime, and really appreciate the audience. And how do I know who's on here?
I'll send you a complete list of who was here.
Terrific.
A lot of people asking for you right here in the chat. So I'll send you all the contact info, as long as the link that is going to be in our website and LinkedIn, and I'll send you personally the link for you to see the video as well.
Thank you very much, Andres. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and look forward to see you in a couple weeks with another guest. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye. Bye, team. Thank you.